Okay, so I just watched Black Panther Wakanda Forever and it was about time, and I have a lot of mixed feelings about this movie, but all in all I think it is a good movie. But before I start talking about the movie, I have to warn you that my reviews do include spoilers for the movie in case you haven't watched the movie and care about not to be spoiled. So yeah, let's get to this review and or whatever you want to call this thing. So the movie starts with King T'Challa dying, because obviously he's dying, and they don't show him, and I think it was the best choice to not have shown him. I don't know, I think it would have just felt really weird if they showed a CGI Chadwick Boseman. And I have to say I was not ready to see that. And thankfully the movie doesn't show him. So King T'Challa dies while Shuri was trying to find a cure for him. I don't think the movie explains why he dies, but I think that in the middle of the movie Shuri implies that it was Killmonger's fault that T'Challa had died, something to do with him burning the heart-shaped vibranium plant things that he burned in Black Panther. Anyways, I think the scene was handled really well because it was really concerning, because I didn't really knew how Disney would handle the passing of Chadwick Boseman. I mean, he had passed away at the height of his career as Black Panther, and it is really unfortunate. And I was curious to see how Disney would move forward with that. But one thing I knew for certain was that Shuri would be next Black Panther, obviously, which is true in this movie. And speaking of Shuri, I think she is starting to become one of my favorite MCU characters. She's not there yet, but I think she was pretty awesome in this movie. Not just her acting, but the writers decided to develop her characters. I think more credit should be goes towards the writers, because they are the ones who can truly make or break the character. And thankfully this time they didn't mess up her character like most of the characters that usually MCU messes up nowadays. And the actress also did a fantastic job acting the character. You really felt the pain she was going through even a year after the death of her brother. She didn't mourn him, she just buried her emotions. She didn't really process the grief of losing her brother, and later in the film her mother, the queen, also dies by the hands of Namor, and that just really pushes her over the edge. And man, I loved it. I think the real star of this movie was Shuri. Also, when she gets her Black Panther powers, instead of seeing her ancestors or her brother or even the queen, she sees Killmonger. It was really nicely done. The way Killmonger represented her anger and vengeance that she felt for Namor. Now that I've mentioned Namor, let's talk about him. I really loved his reveal on the ship when those military people or whoever they were there trying to extract vibranium at the bottom of the sea. The reveal of Namor's people, the suspense, the silence making people fall off the ship, it was really scary, almost scary, like kind of, I don't know. And then Namor shows up. They don't really show him properly, just a silhouette, and he just easily destroys the helicopter, and I think he was really awesome until that point. But then later in the film we actually see Namor, and now I'm going to say it as nicely as I can. I am not a big fan of goofy wings on his legs. I know it's comically accurate, but man, they made MODOK a joke character for being a large head with tiny arms and legs, but they thought people would take this seriously. I mean, it looks goofy as hell. I think they had a good opportunity to reinvent Namor here and maybe, just maybe, get rid of the tiny wings on his ankles. For what it's worth, I did like how they visually showed him using the wings to fly, almost like he's stepping on in mid-air and jumping around. I think that was really cool, but still though, tiny wings looks goofy. But then again, if you liked it, it's fine. Everyone can enjoy what they want. But the thing is, I'm not done with Namor yet. I think his motivations were really weak as hell. He doesn't want to make his civilization known to the world, but he really sends his warriors to get Riri Williams on the bridge, and he wants Wakanda to help him destroy the human world because people bad. Like, that's all the motivation you need. I don't know, man. The only thing that I liked about Namor is that he's a serious and a powerful enemy that you have to take seriously. All in all, I think Namor was pretty bland for my taste. Now I want to talk about Riri Williams. another weak character in this movie. I think she's even more of a weaker character than Namor. The best way I can describe Riri Williams is that she's a plot device, and then, well, I think that's about it. That's mostly her character in this movie. She's a plot device. So what happens in this movie is that Riri Williams develops a vibranium detecting device for what I can only describe as shits and giggles. She makes that device for a goddamned school project, and now powerful people are using that device to find vibranium outside of Wakanda. That's where we were at the beginning of the movie when people were excavating the vibranium site. Well, that vibranium site happens to be Namor's home, and Namor wants to be incognito. That's why he wants to get rid of Riri Williams and asks Wakanda to do it for him. So Shuri and Okoye go, and they basically wants to protect Riri Williams because they are the good guys, yada yada. Anyhow, that's mostly it for Riri Williams. She doesn't really do much of anything for the rest of the movie. And yeah, she also ends up making her not Iron Man suit, which looks absolutely atrocious. And even with that armor, she didn't really had a notable moment in the film. I think her armor in the comic books looks really nice and slick, but what they did show in the movie is completely different from that, and I have a conspiracy theory for that. You have to think about what Marvel's strong woman policy for that. Remember when Kevin Feige said that no female superhero should have anything to learn from their male counterparts in regards to Stephen Strange and Wanda Maximoff? Well, I think that same kind of philosophy is being applied here. I don't think Marvel wants to correlate Riri Williams and Iron Man. I mean, in comics, she's clearly someone who has succeeded Iron Man. I mean, her name is Ironheart, but in the movie, I don't think Riri ever mentions Iron Man as her motivation for building the suit. I think Marvel wants Riri Williams to be a completely separate thing from Iron Man, and the design of Riri's armor shows exactly that she has nothing in common with Iron Man. And the end result is really weird looking, awful of an armor design with really bad CGI. I mean, why couldn't Riri Williams be someone who looked up to Iron Man? Because no, Marvel doesn't want their female superheroes to look up to men, because they were strong and empowered the moment they were born, and thus have no need for learning anything from their male counterparts. Again, this whole thing might change in the future because Riri Williams was almost an NPC character in this movie. Moving on to the climax of the movie, I think it was also somewhat disappointing. I think largely disappointing. You have a single floating ship where Wakandans are fighting with a small amount of fish people, and I'm not sure if Wakanda or these fish people are using their entire military, because right now it looks really sad. Like, the amount of people fighting one another is so small it could be considered a one small military battalion. There were people fighting and not a single fight scene that could be worthy of a mention. I was kind of disappointed that Riri Williams didn't really had any standout scene in the final battle. I mean, she did fight, but nothing too out of ordinary, just some serviceable fight scenes to get the job done. Shuri's fight against Namor was much better than the rest of the climax, which I have to remind you guys did not set a really high bar. You can really appreciate the very noticeable CGI in that fight. Gone are the days when actors will actually have to do stunts and make the movie as good as possible. Now you just have a CGI Shuri fight, sometimes CGI Namor. And a Marvel miracles happens towards the end of the movie where the main character tells the bad guy to not be evil anymore, and the bad guy is like, okay, never thought of it. Something similar happened in Antman 3 with MODOK. Imagine telling Thanos like, hey, can you like stop collecting the Infinity Stones, and Thanos is like, oh yeah, cool bro, I'm just gonna go be a farmer now. So yeah, I mean, the scene was somewhat better than I described because like I said before, I liked Shuri's arc in this movie. She was consumed with vengeance, and just as she was about to kill Namor, she sees her mother, the queen, in the celestial realm, and decides to forgive Namor and tell him to, well, stop fighting. And he says something in his own ancient language or whatever. I mean, I'm not sure what the language he was using, which is also another thing that I didn't like about this movie. When I was watching this movie, I downloaded the subtitles as well, but that still didn't really include the part where Namor is speaking his native tongue, which is really annoying because most of the motivation that I could have understood about Namor would have been when he was talking with his people, but he speaks in a language that I don't understand. And I'm just sitting there like, what the hell is happening? Like, I know that other languages add a flair of realism, but you could at least add some subtitles so people can at least follow the story. So yeah, I think that's most of my thoughts on the movie. Also, T'Challa had a son also named T'Challa, so that's where the movie ends. That's mostly it, and if I have to rate this movie, it would be 65 out of 100. And let me know what you guys think and how you guys would rate this movie. And for now, it's a goodbye.